But first, income inequality is the nation's biggest economic challenge coming in the next decade. And that's a pretty strong statement. And by the way, it's not coming from socialist Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, although I'm sure she believes that as well as these left-leaning presidential candidates like Elizabeth Warren. Instead, this warning is coming from the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Jerome Powell.
Median and lower levels of income have grown, but much more slowly, and growth at the top has been very strong. So we want prosperity to be widely shared, and it comes down to we need policies to make that happen.
More evidence this issue will be at the forefront in 2020 for sure. Joining me now to discuss, Fox News contributor Deneen Borelli, and from the Independent Women's Forum, Hadley Heath Manning. Deneen, let me start with you. You can't argue income inequality, no matter how you frame it. It is a major issue. You could argue that, in fact, that it helped propel President Trump into the White House because there were so many people left behind and forgotten by the political elites on both sides of the aisle. So how do you see this playing out, since everyone acknowledges there's a problem, but there's so many different arguments on solutions?
I think really what the Fed chair is trying to do is light a fire under our lawmakers to promote and maintain free market principles, ideas, and policies like lower taxes and less regulations. Yes, this is an issue. You also have nearly 80% of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. You've got 40% who don't have $400 for emergency purposes. So this is an issue. What we do need are the continuation of President Trump's policies. We have seen record numbers with the jobs. Wages are going up, especially in manufacturing. Right. So the environment for incentives for companies to hire and raise wages is a good thing for all Americans.
No, Hadley, at the top of that soundbite we had, Jerome Powell saying that wages are growing faster at the top. Without sounding like a jerk, that's obvious. Honestly, when people have that kind of money and that kind of know-how to get that money, they seem to be able to do it quicker and faster. That's just a natural occurrence. But should we punish them for that?
Well, we're always going to have income inequality to varying degrees. The CEO is always going to make more than the entry-level worker. But I think our biggest concern, to frame this a little differently, should be about income mobility and whether or not that entry-level worker or low-skill worker in our country, if he has the desire and the work ethic to get there, that one day he can be the CEO or she can be the CEO. And that's, other people call that the American dream.
Do you think that exists right now, Hadley? If someone watching this show is saying, hey, you know what, I've got all those things that the woman just talked about, but I'm stuck. I've been stuck here for 15 years. It's not moving. There's no mobility. And the CEO makes 600 times what I make.
I'm afraid the data would suggest that the American dream is less accessible than it once was. However, you're always going to find really heartwarming anecdotes of people who have reached incredible success. And I do think that policymakers on both sides of the aisle are interested in addressing this, whether it's through some of the reforms that Deneen mentioned or deregulating specifically through changes to occupational licensing law, allowing Americans who are working hard to keep more of their hard-earned paycheck through low taxes. So I think that there's, this is certainly not an issue that belongs to the left, and to suggest that Americans want widespread and shared prosperity isn't a socialist sentiment. In fact, we can have a capitalistic economy as long as people have equality of opportunity, and that will share the prosperity plan.
Deneen, does it feel like it, or certainly the narrative is that this belongs to the left because, on one hand, the right protects the status quo. They protect the idea that CEOs make so much more money than their workers. They protect the notion that the stock market is up and it may only be good for half the economy. In other words, does the right make it easier for the narrative to be that they don't care about this topic?
Well, I think the right needs to do more about promoting what we're seeing with our economy, and also promoting the fact that you have those on the left that want to raise taxes on those who make a lot of money, like you yourself, Mr. Charles. They want to take away your money. And so, listen, Americans need to understand that the Elizabeth Warren and Ocasio-Cortez and all the others, they want to tax the rich and give away freebies, and that's the kind of platform that they are running for when they're in office.
Hadley, how should businesses and the right frame this to get in the conversation in a way that everyone believes that they're sincere?
You know, I think, again, instead of talking about income equality, which is a measure of outcomes, we have to focus on opportunities, income mobility, the American dream. And there's been some recent good news in this regard, in no coincidental happening after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We have seen in the most recent jobs reports that particularly women and minorities, which are groups that have struggled with high levels of labor force participation, we're seeing many of those sideline workers re-entering the workforce. And as Ronald Reagan said, a job is the best social program. So in order to have that wide-based prosperity and fight poverty,
right,
one of the best things we can do is fight joblessness. And that's a positive direction.
And to your point, Hadley, it's so amazing how well non-supervisory workers did in 2018, the same year that the tax cut went in for the rich. Deneen, Hadley, thank you ladies both very much appreciated.